Vilna Gaon and the Rambam and the Yerushalmi. So good. So let's pick up from there. Bigadol. To what extent is the Yerushalmi used as a halachic source? So people know what the Riff said explicitly. He wrote, well, Yerushalmi is written by the sages, and the Bavli is also of the sages. And the Bavli, as you can see, is demonstrably later than Yerushalmi. Discussions in Yerushalmi are continued in the Bavli. So the Bavli is later, Basra'i. Okay? It takes place later, and it takes into account that was in Yerushalmi. So presumably the bottom line in the Bavli is the way to go. That's what the Riff says. What are you going to do? No one echoes what he says necessarily, especially, let's say, the Rambam, who was the century after the Riff. The Rambam was in the Riff's tradition. How does it go? The Riff's later Talmud was the Rimigash. He also took over for the Riff. So that was the last 20 years. The Riff nearly lived a century. The Rimigash took over for the Riff in his 20s. And the Rimigash's student was Maimon Hadayon, who was the father of the Ben Maimon. Okay? It's like the father of the Benos Tzlach, Maimon Hadayon. So the Rambam considers the Riff and the Rimigash and his father, that's his tradition. But he doesn't always agree with the Riff. And the Rambam says in his Hakdama to the Mishnah Torah that when those who are scholars of the Torah want to understand what the halacha is, they're supposed to look in the sources. And what are the sources? The tradition of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And that was recorded in the Mishnah, the Tosefta, in the Bavli, and the Yerushalmi. So the Rambam says that's how you figure out halacha. Later, the Rambam says, and the Bavli is binding on all Klal Yisrael. So some took that to mean that the Bavli is the final word. But then you read through the Rambam, starting in the first few brachas, and the Rambam all over the place is following the Yerushalmi, as the Ravad points out. I think I said to you what the Ravad says right there at the beginning. This Rambam says he follows the Yerushalmi, but he doesn't follow the Yerushalmi enough. So what's the answer? The Rambam is saying the Bavli is binding because there are things that are even post-Bavli. What sources of halacha do, let's say, our traditions make use of that are not Bavli or post-Bavli? So one big one is Maseches Sofrim. There's a lot in Maseches Sofrim. As a matter of fact, there's a lot. Read through Maseches Sofrim, you're kind of surprised. They used to do this? Yeah, they used to do all sorts of things. People know Maseches Sofrim because we take from there Kiddush Levana on Motzei Shabbos and the readings of the other Megillas. Everybody knows you have to read a Megillah this week. That's Esther. There's a whole tractate on Talmud about that. There's a holiday dedicated to that. But and everybody reads the Eicha on Tisha B'Av. But the other three Megillas that Ashkenazim read on the Regalim, those aren't mentioned in the Yerushalmi and the Bavli. And you go to your Sephardic synagogue, they're not going to be reading Shir HaShirim on Shabbos Chol Moed Pesach. They don't do it. Matter of fact, they overread it. They read it every Shabbos anyways at night. So maybe they're doing a little bit too much. But the tradition to, let's say, read Ruth is camera's showing low resolution. Okay, fine. The tradition to read Ruth is strictly Ashkenazic. Nowadays, some people have picked it up again. Why are they doing it? Because they need to fill time. They're staying up all night, so they do that. So when the Rambam says the Bavli is binding, what he meant is as opposed to anything after the Bavli. The Bavli is the last source, but it does not beat the Yerushalmi. Who else goes with this way of, halachic methodology? The Tosafists seem to. All over the place, starting with the first daf, the Tosafists invoke the Yerushalmi. Sometimes tell you to compare what's on the page in front of you in the Bavli with what you see on the Yerushalmi. Right? And more than that, the Vilna Gaon is the one who popularized this. Too many places, the Vilna Gaon seems to be saying, let's go with Yerushalmi. Or just like that, the Rambam the Vilna Gaon will mention concerning Allah and Shulchan Aruch, Yes, here's the source. So find this in Gemara and Shabbos. You can find this in Arachin, wherever you find it. But the Rambam holds like the Yerushalmi, where the Yerushalmi says this and that. And like I said, if other people want to see the articles, I have a short list of instances where the Vilna Gaon is basically showing you halacha like the Yerushalmi, and it always was. And the Vilna Gaon himself, it's attested to in his writings that he felt that if only he could get to Eretz Yisrael and start doing things like they do in Eretz Yisrael, and not like they do in Poland. So there you have it. It's kind of funny now. There are many things that are. It says there's a Sefer Chilukim. Anybody see the Sefer Chilukim? Other things it's alluded to in the Talmud. It says in Eretz Yisrael they do it like that, and in Bavel they do it like that. Bavel is the main Golos. Even though there are Jews living to the west, there were many Jews in Egypt and in what we call today Greece and Italy, and even as far as Spain and in Tunis, what they called Carthage back then, Africa. There were Jews all over the place. So they had different minhagim, and this is attested to. The Sefer Chilukim tells you in Bavel they do like this, and in Eretz Yisrael they do it like that. So there's nothing new under the sun that there would be radically different practices. One of them that people question is it says in Eretz Yisrael they have the 3-year Torah cycle of reading, and in Bavel they do a 1-year cycle. Last time I checked, we are not in Bavel anymore. We're in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe we should be doing a 3-year cycle. It also says in Bavel they just take off their tefillin at the end of the day. In Eretz Yisrael they say a bracha on taking off tefillin. Yismor chukav. The Bible says we don't do that. People in Eretz Yisrael do that. In Ma'arava that's what they do. Last time I checked, we were in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe we should be doing like in Eretz Yisrael, because that's what it says. But for some reason, Minhag Bavel has been brought to Eretz Yisrael. So people do here like they used to do in the Gullus, and the Vilna Gaon was specifically saying, "I want to escape his, neighborhood in the Gullus, so he could do like in Eretz Yisrael and do differently." Why? The Vilna Gaon was already a maverick. Didn't the Vilna Gaon do all sorts of things differently? His own father's asking, "Why are you doing like this? Why are you doing like that?" And the Vilna Gaon basically felt obliged to keep the Isurim. Whenever there is a minhag to act like something is forbidden, a local minhag to prohibit, those have to be kept. It's a chapter in the Talmud Yerushalmi. It's Machon Shilo. It's in Psachim. It gets off topic necessarily of Erev Pesach. First, it talks about Malach on Erev Pesach, right? Are you allowed to do Malach on Erev Pesach? The morning is the I guess the point of contention, but already the afternoon of Erev Pesach, it's like Chol Moed, and that's what we hold. What you can't do in Chol Moed, you shouldn't do in Erev Pesach once it's the afternoon because now it's Korban time. It's like already a holiday. The morning, how do you treat the morning? Is it also like Chol Moed or not? So it depends on where you are. And then the Mishnah continues for a whole chapter, different minhagim. And the tzad shaveh in those minhagim is to prohibit, treat something as though there's prohibition going on. So the Vilna Gaon, you see in his writings, felt obliged to maintain what was local practice to prohibit. He couldn't do differently if everybody around him is prohibiting something. When it came to how he puts on his tefillin or the exact words he uses in davening, that's not an issue of prohibition. So the Vilna Gaon could be different. And he could be machmir on himself for many things. That is what distinguished him. He was known as the Hasid. He had certain act. He was a very pious individual. Was very stringent with regards to his own personal practice, but he didn't impose it on others or say that others had to follow like he did. He also had his own kulas, by the way. Well, one had a lot of kulas that others didn't understand necessarily, but you could find the sources for that.